Hi, my name's Jack Soul. Thanks so much for tuning in to this Worship Pedalboard Rundown. I couldn't be more excited. This is Class of 2024 Worship Pedalboard. Let's get into it. Alright, so here's a look at the board. It's a mini worship board, and honestly, I couldn't be more proud of the way it sounds and the selection of pedals here. It really has been honed in over the years, so I'm excited to share about it and talk about it. If you want to go straight to some sound demos of the board, walkthrough of the pedals and how I use them, feel free to go right ahead. Links in the description. But I'm just going to talk about some of the stuff going on pedalboard wise. This is a Pedal Train Nano Plus, and it really is a size that fits on any stage that I've ever played on, whether small or big. And I'll say as well that I do primarily use this as a worship pedal board, but I do use it for alt rock as well in a band that I play in, so it kind of doubles. Some busier times with worship, some busier times with the rock band, but the tones actually stay very similar across those two genres and how I play. So I'm going to be talking from a worship context, but a lot of stages that I play from a rock band perspective are a lot smaller than worship stages. So that's one reason why it's small. But the main reason why I gravitate towards smaller worship pedal boards, and I have for quite some time now, is just that sometimes I felt like even with the bigger board, I'd be dragging out a lot of more weight, a lot more pedals, a lot more places for things to go wrong. I used to use a MIDI switcher, and even using MIDI, I usually felt that I still used the same 4 or 5 pedals anyways, even though I had maybe even 10 or 12 on the board to choose from. Lots of different flavors of effects, but even though I dragged a bigger board out, I always felt like I gravitated towards 4 or 5 on the board anyways. So when I kind of had that moment of realization of that and went to a smaller board, I've just been a lot happier with it. When I want the flavor, the effect, if you will, it's not a decision really of what one, it's just to put it on, which I prefer. So past that, like I said, it's a Pedal Train Nano. The power supply is at ART ISO 8, and this is a really cheap power supply that's really quiet. I actually pretty much bought one to try it out, because I get asked a lot what my recommendations are of equipment like that, and I wanted to have a cheaper power supply in my back pocket to be able to recommend. And so I bought this one. I think it was $140, and I've just been loving it. It has 8 spots, the ISO 8, and I as you can see here, I'm only using 5. But it's handling them perfectly. There's no extra sound, and it fits under this Pedal Train Nano. So all things considered, I really like that power supply, and I would recommend it, especially for smaller boards. Of course, I don't really think I would get it for a board that has 8 pedals, even though it has 8 spots. Because they vary in milliampage, and it doesn't go as high as you would want for a bigger digital pedal. So small boards though, it's awesome, and I definitely recommend that. So lastly, before we get into some sounds, is effects chain. So firstly, we're starting with my around 2013 Gretsch Electromatic. It's got the Bigsby. This guitar has been, like I said, I got it around 2013. It's all stock. and it just sounds and feels really good. It feels at home. And I've had other Filtertrons over the years, and I honestly just have really liked these ones the most. I'm not sure if it's something about the era they were made or about how the new ones are made, but I really like this guitar. Downfall of this series of the Electromatic I would say is tuning, but I have no problem getting through long sets, and it doesn't seem to bother me even if I've got to tune a couple of times. So going from my Gretsch Electromatic to the Zoom MULTI-STOMP MS50G, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go on, but first and foremost, I use this as my tuner. Onto the Protein, DECO, THERMAE, SPECULAR, TEMPUS. Obviously, you see the order. It's going stereo out into 2 Joyo American Sounds, so it keeps the signal stereo, into my Zoom R4 multi-track recorder. So there's a lot of info for you. If you have any questions on that setup, though, please feel free to reach out in the comments. But without further ado, let's get into some sound demos. So like I said, the Zoom is first and foremost used as a tuner. I've used the Zoom as a tuner for years, and primarily because I think it's really awesome to have a tuner spot being taken up by a pedal that can do lots of other things if you need it. I've covered this pedal quite a bit in the channel over the past year, but again, it might not do everything perfectly, but it does a really good job, and it's right there if I need it. So if I wanted some octave stuff or POG stuff, or I'll show you one of the things I've been using on it lately later, but this is kind of just a really neat option to replace your tuner position, and it does lots of other stuff. Secondly is the Protein. So here's just with Gretsch right into the 2 Joyos. So just pretty flat EQ, not too much exciting going on, but turning on the Protein, I'm really excited about this. I always have the blue section on the Protein, and basically I use the Protein kind of like I would use 2 separate guitar pedals, from the perspective of the green side is always going to be stacked with the blue side. So I don't really have them set up right now, at least, to be used individually. It's always a stacked position. So this is kind of least, that's least gain, and then this is more gain. I'm kind of throwing on other pedals along the way, but I'll explain them in order. So this was the blue side, and here's the green side. And sometimes I throw that on with a double tracker kind of setting on the Specular Tempus. So it makes a big deal when you're going stereo to use this kind of effect. So kind of like. Even switching down to the bridge position. So I really like double tracking and that kind of stuff, and the Specular Tempus does so much, so I'm excited to get down there, but kind of leaving it more on the neck position and the blue side of the protein for the rest of the demo. I have the DECO set up for vibrato. Here's without it. Here's with it. So I really love the Generation Loss by CHASEBLISS, but I don't always feel like I know how to use it live, especially, you know, in a worship context. It is a lot, and it doesn't really it's just really upfront, which I really love playing at home. But when I'm looking for vibrato that I'm kind of using in an alt rock or a worship setting, I like it to be a little bit more subtle, and the DECO does such a good job of that. So going back to the zoom actually for a second, there's a setting on the zoom that's kind of more like the destroyer setting on the Strymon Mobius or the Gen Loss that I partner with the vibrato on the zoom, and this is kind of what that sounds like. Here's without the vibrato. Here's with it. I love that combo. And just having the there's like a vinyl crackle behind the effect on the zoom, and it only starts after you play a note. So then it fades out. Yeah, so that background noise is the sample rate reducer. But just having that sound behind it when you're playing, shout out if you can identify either of those tunes that I just played. But I just love having that there, and I don't use that a whole lot live, but you know, when I do get a chance to, it just makes me happy. So the second half of the zoom is the tape saturation is a boost. So I use it just on the cassette setting. I like the compression on it. And just going to the bridge. So got lots of character, and again, depending on where I'm playing, I can kind of boost that up more or less. And you know, it's kind of my cut through the mix pedal, but my honest opinion on cutting through the mix is more about dynamics, right? Like when you lower the tone on something you're playing, so for instance, if I turn this on here, it's not going to cut through the mix as much as if the tone is up. But with the dynamics of your worship team, I think is, you know, equally as important and not talked about as much when it's, you know, comes to cutting through the mix. If you have a lead line or, you know, a solo or something like that in a song, your bandmates want to keep their playing big so that the momentum stays up for you, but they want to dial back on some of their wet effects. They want to play a little bit more closed, so less open phrasing. You know, these are just some tips. They won't work in all scenarios, but I found when I want to stand out, or when my part is supposed to be forefront, the other bandmates have to pay attention to that and play accordingly as well. So that's one of my bigger realizations about cutting through the mix, because actually with Filtertrons, they're a little bit lower output. I do find it hard, generally speaking, to kind of cut through the mix, and they have very little sustain actually as well, but they sound amazing, and when you apply these other strategies, you can get there. And I think they're more than worth keeping around, even though they're a little bit lower output. But enough with that. So staying on my always on pretty much reverb, let's get to the THERMAE. So it's always dotted eighth. There's quite a bit of vibrato, and it's a really fun sound. Alright, we're on to the tuning game. So I'll use this quite a bit. I love dotted eighth, and so sometimes I'll just use it to thicken up a rhythm part. And sometimes I'll use it for more of like the U2 kind of sound. And the THERMAE is such a solid choice for a really warm, character-rich delay, which is my favorite. But if you want more of a digital sound, that wouldn't be my main recommendation. And tips and tricks on the THERMAE as well. I got caught with this one earlier in the summer, but don't change the tempo with the pedal on. And that's normal for an analog delay, but that's just a quick tip. So finally, Specular Tempus, and this is where actually the stereo starts. Last pedal. I'm not a huge fan of delay stereo, which makes sense for the THERMAE because it's not stereo, but I love stereo delay. Reverb. I just don't love the ping pong sound or anything like that for worship. So that doesn't bother me that it's not stereo, but stereo reverb is awesome to have. So this is the always on. Here's my main go-to for bigger sound. And just to cycle through some other options, got a modulated reverb. A bigger, more classic modulation in the reverb. A shimmer, just barely shimmering in the background. It sounds glorious, even though it's just barely there, which is my main goal for shimmer reverb. I have a swell, which I'm still working on. I don't know if I love it. And like I showed you in the with the protein earlier, this is the double tracker. There's some movement to it. This is from a delay algorithm. Yeah, so all of this put together are pedals that I would fully recommend. I've repurchased all of these pedals except the THERMAE, and I repurchased them because I really missed them. And all of these pedals do so well in both worship context and alt rock. And that's so important to me. And these pedals always do such a stand-up job at what they offer. So I hope that this gave you some inspiration for maybe your next nano board and why a smaller board might be a good fit for you. And thank you so much for watching. Feel free, I've got videos on a lot of the stuff that's on this board, including my stereo amp and cab sim setup that I'm using with the Joyos, so feel free to go check all that stuff out. And I do have a bigger pedal board that I use for creative stuff at home and occasionally take out to gigs and stuff, and I have lots of videos on that on my channel as well. So thanks again for stopping by. We'll catch you in the next one.